Hello, everyone, and welcome to the For the Community podcast. I'm here with Dima and David, and my name is Ryan. And our topic today are hunger and poverty within Hamilton. So you guys want to say hi?
What's up, guys? Welcome to the For the Community podcast. Let's do it.
It's
a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure. All right, let's go. So today we're talking about hunger and poverty within Hamilton. Just give a brief overview of Dima. What do you think about poverty in Hamilton? Do you think it's a big issue?
Yeah, I think poverty in Hamilton is one of the biggest issues that Hamilton has currently. Hamilton ranks as one of the top cities in Ontario when it comes to poverty, because Hamilton's poverty rate in 2016 was 16.6%, which is 4% higher than Ontario's average. So that clearly indicates that it's a big problem, especially within the less advantageous communities within Hamilton, such as the downtown area near the factories. So poverty is definitely a big issue.
I definitely agree. All right, David, what do you think about poverty in Hamilton?
So I agree with Dima that it is a big issue. And as somebody who's lived in Hamilton and around Hamilton, even just going downtown, it's pretty clear that a lot of it is in poverty, and a lot of it now is going to young people and to children. So a lot of them have to go to food banks and stuff, which is quite terrible. But it's definitely a big problem.
1,500 kids have to go hungry every weekend. So every weekend, 1,500 kids don't have something to eat, which is a real problem, because especially kids who are growing and need to be fed in order to, be healthy, have a better mood, and essentially have a better quality of life. They're going without food, so that's a huge problem.
Is that's from the 2019 report from City Kids, right?
Yeah.
It also states, hunger and poverty are a vicious cycle. I can agree with that, because when you're hungry, it doesn't only affect your mood, but your ability to work at your best level and learn at your best level is definitely impacted.
It really impacts everything. Especially when I'm hungry personally, I can't really focus on anything. I won't want to do work. I won't want to do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I could see if you were hungry for longer periods of time, how it could be detrimental to not only your health, but everything really about your life.
Yeah, I think poverty and hunger pretty much tied together. Because especially people in poverty, it's hard for them to afford food, especially if they have kids and a family to feed.
Yeah.
So if you're in poverty, the chances of you going hungry are astronomically larger.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so I'm just going to throw some stats at you guys. So, some poverty statistics from the government of Ontario says, in Ontario, 15.4% of all children are living in poverty. This means that they're living in a household that has an income less than 40% of the median household income. So, children are one of the main people that are affected by this when they're kind of born into the life of their parents, and so they're essentially born into the life of poverty.
And they can't really do anything to help it, because they're just kids, so they can't really work or anything like that.
They don't have a way to provide for themselves. It's they're relying on their parents or guardians or whoever's looking after them, and especially these people in poverty, it's hard for them to afford food for themselves, and let alone their children and anybody to live with.
Exactly.
I think it's important to have good foundation systems and support systems, especially for kids, because if we get ahead of the issue at a young age, that means they could be set up better for the future, which means they'll have less problems of the poverty and stuff like that in the future. Not to say that you shouldn't be there shouldn't be support system for adults as well, but I think it's more important to educate and help support kids who are in poverty and hunger, because if you set them up with a goal and guidelines and a good foundation system, then one day once they enter society and stuff, they'll be better set up to succeed and not be in poverty the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially with kids, since like they're younger and like they don't know like all the like support systems they have access to, like to get food and
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly. Yeah.
Whereas like adults would know that, and I think like I remember like when I was in elementary school, we always had like food drives and stuff for like food shelters, food banks and stuff, and I think like those are really helpful, especially for the kids, because like Good Shepherd, for example, like always gives out food to kids and anybody in need that needs it. So
well, that's why it's important to spread awareness about the issue, because that way more people know and more people will be inclined to help, because there's a really big like wage gap between the, or not even wage gap, but like there's just a really big gap between the poor and the rich in Hamilton. And I think if more of the richer, at least average income families and stuff like that were more knowledgeable about the situation, then maybe they'd be more inclined to help out.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so I got a statistic here relating to the prices of rent and how that might affect poverty. So the Hamilton Food Share Hunger Report 2019 says that a 10% increase has been shown in the number of visits by children to local food banks. It also shows how unaffordable rents in Hamilton have become for the lowest income residents who must rely on food banks to survive. So do you think like almost the landlords have a responsibility to lower rents for those people that can't afford it, or what do you feel about like the rent situation for the poverty?
I think maybe that's more the government's area of like where they should be helping out, because I mean the landlords, he has to make money too, obviously.
Yeah.
It is tough because they could be lowering it, but you can't really look at everything like that. Like everyone, like the government can ensure measures and make regulations, laws and stuff like that to cap rent prices, especially for the lower income. Like they could invoke regulations and stuff for lower income areas to have less of an increase than most of the rest of Hamilton, in order to ensure that these people that are in poverty aren't overpaying for rent that they can't afford.
So you think it lies within like the government's hands?
I think the government can make the biggest difference there, because you can't really force people to lower their rent prices. I mean, that's just not really logical.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because Hamilton is growing as like a city, and a lot of new people are wanting to move here and move around it. So naturally, the prices are going to go up.
Yeah.
Because especially downtown or like near downtown, there's not a lot of land to build like residential areas. It's all just like apartment buildings owned by landlords. So I don't think if the prices obviously get too high, the government will like set a limit to how high they can put it, because they do have that power. But it's just unfortunate with the lack of land to build like project houses or like
affordable
areas.
So what do you guys think about, obviously we're in this global pandemic with COVID-19. Not only does it affect, the upper, the middle class, but it also affects probably the most heavily the lower class, because they don't have access to, like people are running to stores, like absolutely like taking everything from grocery stores, and like let alone they would have a tough time affording groceries in the first place. So it's probably even harder for them to like survive and have the supplies right now to stay healthy and like stay clean of the virus. Like, what do you guys think about that?
Well, I think that this virus obviously it affects everybody, no matter which class, but obviously people in poverty and in the lower class, I think it hits especially hard, because a lot of them are like living paycheck to paycheck on like minimum wage jobs, like hourly wage, and the fact that a lot of places are closed now actually takes away work from a large amount of people, and the government is like setting up programs to like get them money and like get money to people who need it, but it still might not be enough for a lot of people to, pay for their rate of living.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The virus is, I mean, it's slowing down the economy like in a great way. So, I mean, a lot of shops are closed. There's a lot more unemployment now. I mean, obviously, but people are having to fire more people. So people are losing jobs, which means they can't work, which means they can't make money. And like you said, the government's trying to do stuff to help that, which is great. But I think it is bad how people don't look at how bad this virus and the pandemic is impacting the poor people in our community, and there should really be more support systems for them just than what the government's doing. I think we can all pitch in because they don't really have savings to rely on or anything like that. Most of them, like you said, are living paycheck to paycheck, so it's going to be very, very tough, especially if they have to go far to get food because most places are closed and stuff like that. And then they're risking, if they get on public transit, they're risking catching the virus. And if they're in poverty, their health isn't that great. So, most likely. So that means that they're at an even higher risk. So, all this accumulated, it's just not great for them at all. So
yeah, exactly. And even when thinking about people that are homeless, that actually don't have homes, people, they're saying to stay home, while these people actually don't even have homes. So they're kind of already exposed by being out, sleeping in dirty situations and stuff, where it's not sanitary. So they kind of have nowhere to turn.
The thing is, Hamilton actually has a pretty decent support system for the homeless, but it doesn't have a good enough support system to get them out of the lifestyle. Hunger's an issue, but Hamilton actually does a pretty decent job of finding viable ways of trying to provide food, and they're doing a decent job. I'm not saying there's no hunger, but they're doing a decent job. But people just keep living in this cycle where they keep getting support and stuff like that, but the end goal is to get them out of the cycle so they're not in poverty anymore. So if they find a stable job and stuff like that, I think that's really the main key to getting rid of poverty is not only getting systems just to feed people and giving them houses temporarily, but finding ways to get them out of poverty for good.
Yeah, and even with the homeless people now, there are shelters set up, but the problem with the shelters is it's the opposite of what you're supposed to do with the virus. You're not supposed to go near people, you're not supposed to be in groups. But with the large amount of homeless people in Hamilton going to shelters, it kind of just puts them more at risk of catching it.
Yeah, I agree with that. So in what ways do you think not only we can help, but is there any political or structural solutions that the government can implement, or even society can implement to help aid the poverty and hunger issue within Hamilton?
I think there's a few ways, a few solutions, or at least help that can be done to help poverty and hunger. I think if we increase employment opportunity in struggling areas, that would go a long way. If we could find stable jobs and stuff like that to make sure that people have a steady income, because I think that's really key in helping people out of poverty is once they get a base and a foundation. So let's say they work for a year or two and they got that base, that means they can continue to strive forward. So I think employment opportunities is really huge, especially in the struggling areas of Hamilton.
Yeah, and I think that Hamilton as a whole, I think poverty is improving, overall. I think that the city's making good efforts towards it with different social enterprises and different charities that are there to help people that are in poverty. But as Dima said, it's there's only so much you can do with the food and stuff. You need to give them a source of income that can keep them afloat for as long as they need it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because here it says from the Hamilton Social Planning Research Council, it says Hamilton's poverty rate has dropped by nearly a quarter over the past 2 decades. And it says that this is a sign that the poverty fighting strategies are actually having an impact. So all these like the food banks and the homeless shelters are having an impact. I think we just need to realize that and like not only make more, but like reinforce the ones that we already have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think paid family leave and sick leave is also very important because people, they have to care for their families, and when they're sick, sometimes certain jobs don't provide good enough family care, like maternity leave and stuff like that, and sick leave at the same time. So just more of these systems where if people are struggling with something, like let's say they have a serious disease or a serious sickness, that they're taken care of and not just left out to die.
Yeah, I agree. I think probably the biggest thing is, like, we can only do so much in terms of helping them by giving them the food and the shelter they need. But I think what you said, Dima, is the most important, like, kind of giving them the job opportunity so then they can end up doing that by themselves, like getting an income and end up getting the food and shelter they need, like, from their own salaries instead of relying on the programs.
I think it's also one of the most important things in my opinion is to have a high quality childcare system and a high quality like early education, because if you give kids a good support system when they're younger and you educate them properly when they're very young and they're taken care of, that can lead to future generations being much less impoverished and much more educated than what we're seeing right now. So I think in the long term, I think that should be one of the main goals for the government if you're trying to play a long term game, which is always important, because like I said, once you educate the children and if you give them a good support system from since they were born, like a lot of kids don't have access to if they're in poverty and stuff like that, then I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we're almost nearing the end of this podcast. Just want to conclude on these closing remarks saying, I think in this time especially, during like COVID-19 and all this, I think it's important for the community, those who are financially stable and like healthy and already in a good like position in their life. I feel like it's important for them to kind of act right now. Like, this is our time to act, helping. It's obviously a great time of concern. So helping like by donating or even like small acts of kindness, by like dropping off groceries, maybe to a neighbor that's elderly and lives by themselves, that like may not have a great income or even the ability to go out and get groceries because of the health risk. So I just want to leave you with some organizations that maybe you could donate to or that could benefit the society. So David, what are some organizations that could be of use right now?
Some organizations that are useful in the community right now is the Mustard Seed, which is a grocery store that it offers like lower prices for low-income families and stuff. Good Shepherd, obviously, donating food to them always helps for those who can't afford it and really need it. And also City Kids, because the youth in Hamilton is like a big, like the poverty in the youth is a big problem, and like we need to do what we can to help the future of our city.
All right, yeah, I definitely agree. So yeah, guys, go check those out. Do your part, and yeah, we're signing off on this one.
Thanks for listening.
See you guys.